For most people, success is measured in money, power, and influence. But for Ethan Carter, the billionaire CEO of Carter Global Holdings, success had once meant something far simpler: coming home to the woman he loved. 4 years ago, Ethan Carter had the kind of life many people dreamed about. His company dominated international markets, his name appeared in major business magazines, and investors trusted every move he made. Yet none of those things mattered to him as much as his wife, Amelia Carter. She had been the quiet strength behind his success, the person who reminded him that beyond boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, life was about love, loyalty, and trust. Amelia had never cared about Ethan's wealth. She loved the man behind the title, the one who laughed too loudly at his own jokes, who stayed up late planning their future, and who promised that no matter how big his empire became, she would always be his greatest priority. But one night everything changed. A misunderstanding sparked by secrets within Ethan's corporate world created a storm neither of them saw coming. Words were left unsaid. Questions went unanswered. And before Ethan could fix the damage, Amelia disappeared. Not temporarily. Completely. No goodbye. No explanation. Just an empty closet, a missing phone number, and a silence that echoed through the halls of the house they once shared. Friends believed Amelia had walked away from the pressure of Ethan's world. The media whispered rumors. Some said she had grown tired of being married to a billionaire. Others believed she simply wanted a different life. But Ethan Carter never believed any of those stories. Because the woman he loved would never leave without a reason. For 4 years he searched quietly while building his empire higher than ever. And through every business victory and every public appearance, one detail remained unchanged: the wedding ring on his hand. Because Ethan Carter never stopped believing his wife was still out there somewhere. And soon fate would prove he was right. 4 years of unanswered questions had taught Ethan Carter how to live with silence. He had buried himself in work, expanded Carter Global Holdings into new international markets, and built an even stronger reputation as one of the most powerful CEOs in the business world. Yet no achievement ever managed to fill the quiet space Amelia had left behind. On a cool evening, Ethan boarded a long international flight bound for Singapore for an important corporate summit. His schedule was packed, his phone filled with emails, and his mind already focused on negotiations waiting on the other side of the world. For him, the flight was supposed to be nothing more than a few hours of rest before another demanding meeting. But fate had other plans. As Ethan settled into his first-class seat, a calm voice echoed through the cabin. "Good evening, passengers. Welcome aboard. My name is Amelia, and I'll be assisting you during today's flight." The moment the name reached his ears, something inside Ethan froze. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he lifted his eyes. And there she was. Standing in the aisle just a few feet away was the woman he had searched for across cities and continents. Amelia Carter, now dressed in the elegant navy uniform of a flight attendant, was greeting passengers with a polite smile. For a brief second, the world seemed to stop. She looked older, more confident, her hair neatly tied back as she carried herself with quiet professionalism. But there was no doubt in Ethan's mind. It was her. The wife who had disappeared 4 years ago without a word. As Amelia stepped closer to offer a welcome drink, her eyes finally met his. The tray in her hands trembled slightly. Shock flickered across her face before she quickly regained control, the training of her job forcing her to remain calm. Neither of them spoke. But in that silent moment at 30,000 feet above the ground, both of them understood one thing clearly. The past they thought was over had just returned. The airplane cruised smoothly above the clouds, but inside the cabin, Ethan Carter felt as if the ground beneath his life had shifted again. For 4 long years he had imagined countless possibilities about Amelia's disappearance. He had wondered if she was safe, if she had built a new life somewhere, or if she ever thought about him the way he thought about her. Yet nothing could have prepared him for this moment, sitting only a few steps away from the woman he had once called his entire world. Amelia moved through the cabin with practiced grace, greeting passengers and checking seatbelts, her calm professionalism hiding the storm that was surely raging inside her. Every movement seemed careful, as if she were trying to maintain distance without drawing attention. But distance was impossible. Ethan's eyes followed her without meaning to. Memories surfaced with every glance. The way she used to laugh in their kitchen, the warmth of her hand in his during long walks, the quiet evenings when they talked about their dreams for the future. Those memories felt painfully close now. Amelia eventually reached Ethan's row again, holding a tray with drinks for the passengers in first class. Her expression remained polite, but her eyes briefly flickered toward him before she placed a glass of water on the table beside his seat. Neither of them spoke. It wasn't anger that filled the silence between them. It was something deeper, 4 years of confusion, hurt, and questions that had never been answered. Then suddenly, the plane shook gently as it passed through unexpected turbulence. Amelia lost her balance for a brief moment. Instinctively, Ethan reached out and caught her arm before she could fall. The contact lasted only seconds, but it felt far longer. For the first time in 4 years, they stood close enough to feel each other's presence again. Amelia quickly steadied herself and pulled back, whispering a quiet thank you before continuing her duties. Yet as she walked away, one truth became impossible for either of them to ignore. Some connections, no matter how much time passes, never truly disappear. By the time the plane finally landed, neither Ethan nor Amelia had managed to escape the weight of their shared past. For the rest of the flight, their interactions remained brief and professional. Amelia continued serving passengers with the calm confidence expected of a flight attendant, while Ethan sat quietly in his seat, his thoughts racing faster than the aircraft that carried them across the sky. He had imagined many scenarios about meeting Amelia again someday. In some versions she explained everything. In others she walked away without another word. But none of those imagined moments had felt this real. When the plane touched down and passengers began gathering their belongings, Ethan stayed seated longer than necessary. His mind was made up. 4 years of silence had been more than enough. This time he wasn't going to let her disappear again. After the passengers exited, Ethan walked slowly through the terminal until he reached the crew exit. Airport staff moved around him in a busy rhythm, but his attention stayed fixed on the hallway where flight attendants would eventually appear. Minutes later, Amelia stepped through the doors with the rest of her crew. The moment she saw him waiting there, her footsteps stopped. For a brief second, the confidence she carried during the flight faded, replaced by a familiar mixture of surprise and hesitation. Ethan walked toward her, his voice calm but firm. "Amelia." Hearing her name spoken by him again seemed to shake her more than anything else. She tried to remain composed, but the past was no longer something either of them could avoid. "I waited 4 years, Ethan continued quietly. "I deserve to know why you left." The words hung heavily between them. Amelia looked down for a moment before finally meeting his gaze again. There was no anger in her eyes, only exhaustion from carrying a story she had never told. Her voice came softly but clearly. "You think I left without a reason," she said. Then she took a slow breath. "But the truth is, I believed you were the one who walked away first." The busy airport hallway slowly emptied as travelers rushed toward their destinations, but Ethan Carter and Amelia stood frozen in a quiet corner, surrounded by the weight of memories they had both carried for years. Ethan had spent 4 years believing Amelia abandoned their marriage. Hearing her say that she thought he had walked away first left him stunned. It was a truth he had never expected. Amelia folded her arms gently, not out of anger, but as if protecting herself from reopening old wounds. "I didn't disappear because I wanted to hurt you," she said calmly. "I left because I believed I no longer had a place in your life." Her words were steady, but the emotion behind them was impossible to hide. Amelia explained that 4 years earlier, during one of the most intense moments in Ethan's company, she had received a message that changed everything. The message made it appear as if Ethan had chosen his business and reputation over their marriage. To her, it looked like a clear sign that their relationship had become another sacrifice to his growing empire. Heartbroken and unwilling to become a burden in a world she no longer understood, Amelia made a difficult decision. She left. At first, she traveled quietly between cities, trying to figure out who she was without the title of a billionaire's wife. Eventually, she found an opportunity to train as a flight attendant. The job gave her something she needed more than anything: freedom. Flying allowed her to see the world, meet new people, and slowly rebuild her confidence. For the first time in years, she was living a life defined by her own choices. Ethan listened carefully, realizing how much pain she must have endured alone. Standing before him now was not the same woman who had once waited for him at home after long meetings. Amelia had grown stronger. And for the first time, Ethan understood that the years apart had changed both of them. The conversation at the airport left both Ethan and Amelia standing at a crossroads neither of them had expected to face again. 4 years of separation could not be erased in a single conversation, yet something important had already begun. The truth was finally being spoken. Before Amelia could walk away, Ethan quietly asked if they could meet again the next day. His voice carried none of the authority people associated with a billionaire CEO. Instead, it held the quiet sincerity of a man who simply wanted to understand the woman he had once promised forever. Amelia hesitated. Her life had moved forward. She had built routines, friendships, and a sense of independence that helped her survive the heartbreak she once carried. Opening the door to the past again felt risky. But after a moment of reflection, she nodded. The next afternoon they met at a small cafe not far from the airport. It was a simple place, far removed from the luxury restaurants Ethan usually visited for business meetings. Yet the quiet atmosphere felt right for two people trying to reconnect without pressure. For a while, their conversation stayed gentle and careful. They talked about small things first. Amelia's travels, the cities she had visited, the experiences she gained as a flight attendant. Ethan shared stories about how his company had grown, though he admitted that success had often felt empty without someone to celebrate it with. Gradually, the distance between them softened. At one point, Amelia spoke about how lonely those first months after leaving had been. Her voice trembled slightly and she quickly looked away. Without thinking, Ethan reached across the table. He didn't grab her hand or say dramatic words. Instead, when they stood to leave, he simply stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her in a gentle hug. It was quiet, respectful, and brief. But in that moment, both of them realized something important. Even after 4 years apart, the comfort they once shared still existed. After their quiet reunion at the cafe, Ethan Carter realized something important. Love alone would not fix the past. If he truly wanted Amelia back in his life, he needed to uncover the truth behind the misunderstanding that had destroyed their marriage. For 4 years, he had believed Amelia left without explanation. Now he understood that she had left because she believed he had betrayed her. That meant someone had created the lie. The thought alone was enough to push Ethan into action. Back at Carter Global Holdings, Ethan began reviewing old records from the time Amelia disappeared. Emails, phone logs, internal messages, every detail from that chaotic period was carefully examined. The deeper he searched, the clearer one pattern became. A former executive named Victor Langford had been closely involved in several key decisions during that time. Victor had once been a trusted member of the company's leadership team. Ambitious, intelligent, and persuasive, he had always seemed loyal to Ethan's vision. But ambition sometimes hid dangerous motives. Ethan's investigation soon uncovered something disturbing. 4 years earlier, Victor had secretly manipulated internal communications, including a message that Amelia had received. The message made it appear as though Ethan had personally chosen a major corporate deal over protecting their marriage. In reality, Ethan had never even seen the message that was sent in his name. Victor's plan had been simple: create enough chaos in Ethan's personal life to weaken his leadership and make it easier to seize control of key company positions. The truth was shocking, but it also brought clarity. Ethan wasted no time exposing the evidence during a company board meeting. The proof was undeniable. Victor Langford was immediately removed from his position and publicly held accountable for the deception. For the first time in 4 years, the truth finally surfaced. And with that truth came something Amelia had never expected. The realization that Ethan Carter had never betrayed her at all. When Ethan finally told Amelia the truth about Victor Langford's deception, the news left her quiet for a long time. They were sitting in a peaceful park not far from the airport, a place Amelia often visited during her breaks between flights. Planes occasionally passed overhead, their distant sound reminding her of the life she had built over the past 4 years. But at that moment, her thoughts were far away from the sky. The truth Ethan revealed changed everything she had believed for years. "I really thought you chose your company over us," Amelia said softly, her voice filled with disbelief. "That message looked so real." Ethan nodded, regret clear in his expression. "I should have protected you better," he replied. "I was so focused on fighting business battles that I didn't realize someone was using that chaos to destroy the most important thing in my life." The words were honest, not dramatic. For Amelia, hearing them stirred emotions she had tried to bury long ago. The pain she carried for years had been built on a lie. Yet those same years had also shaped her into someone stronger and more independent. Ethan took a slow breath before speaking again. "I'm not asking you to erase the past," he said. "And I'm not expecting things to go back to the way they were overnight." He paused for a moment before continuing. "But if there's even a small part of you that still believes in what we had, I would like the chance to rebuild it." Amelia looked at him carefully. The confident billionaire she once knew was now standing before her with humility and patience. After a moment, Ethan stepped closer and gently hugged her again, just like he had at the cafe. The embrace was simple, but this time Amelia didn't pull away quickly. Instead, she allowed herself to rest there for a moment. And in that quiet space between past and future, Amelia realized something surprising. Her heart had never truly stopped caring for Ethan. In the weeks that followed their honest conversation in the park, Ethan and Amelia slowly began rebuilding something they once believed was lost forever. There were no dramatic promises or rushed decisions. Instead, they chose patience. For Ethan, that meant stepping away from his usual fast-paced world whenever he could. Billion-dollar meetings and corporate expansion still filled his schedule, but he began making time for the small moments that once mattered so much. Sometimes he simply waited for Amelia after her flight so they could share coffee and talk. Other days, they walked quietly through the city, revisiting places that held memories from the early days of their relationship. Each step through those familiar streets reminded them of the life they had once built together. At first, Amelia kept her distance emotionally. 4 years of independence had taught her to rely on herself. She loved her work as a flight attendant, and the freedom of traveling the world had helped her rediscover who she was beyond being someone's wife. But Ethan never pressured her to choose between her life and him. Instead, he showed her something she had not seen before: change. The powerful CEO who once allowed business pressures to consume his time had learned how fragile relationships could be. Now he listened more carefully, spoke more honestly, and valued Amelia's happiness above public expectations. One evening, after Amelia returned from a long flight, Ethan met her outside the airport terminal. There were no reporters, no luxury cars waiting, and no grand gestures. Just Ethan standing there with a warm smile. When Amelia walked toward him, he opened his arms, and she stepped into a quiet hug that felt natural and familiar. In that simple moment, Amelia realized something that surprised her. Time had changed many things in their lives, but the love between them had never truly disappeared. It was a calm evening, the kind where the city lights shimmered like stars reflected on the river below. Ethan had asked Amelia to meet him at the same place where he had proposed all those years ago, a small rooftop garden overlooking the skyline. Amelia arrived, her heart beating faster than usual, unsure of what to expect. 4 years of separation had taught her caution, yet a quiet hope lingered that the man waiting for her truly understood the woman she had become. Ethan was already there, hands relaxed at his sides, his eyes fixed on her as if no time had passed at all. But she could see the subtle differences in him: the patience, the humility, the depth of feeling that had grown from years of longing. They stood facing each other, the city buzzing far below but irrelevant in that suspended moment. Ethan spoke first, his voice steady, warm, and unhurried. "I'm not asking you to forget the years we lost, Amelia. I'm not asking you to erase the pain or the distance. I'm only asking if you'll choose to start over with me." Amelia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. 4 years of fear, doubt, and longing pressed into her chest, but this time it felt safe to release them. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against his, and finally allowed herself to smile. Without words, they embraced, a hug filled with forgiveness, understanding, and the quiet strength of a love that had endured time and distance. In that embrace, they promised each other something far greater than passion or grandeur: a forever built on trust, respect, and unwavering devotion. When they finally pulled back, Ethan gently held her face in his hands and whispered, "We're home, Amelia. Forever starts now." Amelia rested her forehead against his, a soft smile breaking through, knowing in her heart that this was the beginning of the life they were always meant to share.